Hello everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A wonderful day all of you. Welcome to our Institution of Global Professional Fee International webinar. Thank you all for joining with us in this marvelous session. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to be associated with IGP as a global member. And I feel honored to host this webinar and it's my delight to welcome you all to our Institution of Global Professional Fee International webinar. Once again, thank you again all for joining with us in this session. And it's my humble request to you that you stay with us till the program ends. And time to time, you like our Facebook page and subscribe our YouTube channel. Before we have completed our 801 webinar successfully now, I will be presenting webinar number 802 and the topic is comprehensive sexuality education on Boon or Bane. Today I have a speaker from Philippines. Today our speaker name is Cesar Justin Nabalta. He is a senior high school teacher of Department of Education, Humanities and Social Science, teacher Solano High School.
Yes.
So,
Am I audible, sir? Am I audible? Okay.
thank you, sir. So, give a short description about yourself, then you can start. Sir, you can start your presentation now.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Again, my name is Zar Justin Navalta, and I'm from the Philippines. And my topic for today that I would like to share to you is that about comprehensive sexuality education. Okay. So comprehensive sexual education, why did I chose this topic is because of the what do you call this? One of the pressing concerns now in our society is about teenage pregnancy. Now, let's take a look at comprehensive sexual education, whether it is a boon or a bane in our society, in our community, and especially when talking about education and, of course, delivering the quality of education. All right, let's start with what comprehensive sexuality education means. Okay, so comprehensive sexuality education is a curriculum based process of teaching and learning about the cognitive, emotional, physical, and social aspects of sexuality. Meaning to say, it is a curriculum based process in order for the young people and children to be equipped with knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values in order for them to be empowered in a sense that they will be more of realization of their health, well-being, and dignity, and of course develop respectful social and sexual relationship, consider how their choices affect their own well-being and others, and understand and ensure that protection of their rights throughout their lives are protected and ensured. Now, when talking about comprehensive sexuality education, it is actually linked and based. Okay, it is actually linked and based on the three SDGs. Okay, three SDGs, the SDGs of good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, or the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. So if we take a look at again with the definition of comprehensive sexuality education based on equipping children and young people about knowledge, skills, and attitudes in order for them to be empowered and realize their full potential with regards to their health, well-being and dignity, and of course develop respectful social and sexual relationship, and consider how their choices are being made with regards on how they are being related with one another. These three SDGs therefore ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at ages, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So that is basically linked on why should there be a comprehensive sexuality education. It is also based on these SDGs, SDG 3, 4, and 5. Now let's dig deeper on the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education. It is the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education is basically a project of the United Nations, specifically UNESCO, okay, and UNPA, UNAIDS, and many more, of course, UNICEF. They have described in this technical guidance, they have described in this book that comprehensive sex education, it is comprehensive because there is a comprehensive set of key concepts, topics, and illustrative learning objectives to guide the development of locally adapted curricula. Therefore, if it is comprehensive, it is also actually age appropriate, and it is logically sequenced as accordance to the learning objectives of each of the key concepts and of course topics. Okay, if this is comprehensive, it is also aligned with the three domains of learning, which are knowledge, attitudes, and skills. Therefore, if we say comprehensive sexuality education, now it refers on how this sexuality education is in depth, in nature, and breadth of topics to consistently deliver to learners over time throughout their education rather than a one-off lesson or intervention. It is not just a part and parcel of our lesson, but it or a an intervention or an activity, learning activity within our lesson. But of course, let's take a look at comprehensive sexual education into a another subject learning area per se. Okay, now what are the key concepts under comprehensive sex education? Well, according to the International Technical Guidance on Sexual Education, these are the key concepts. So, for key concept one, we have relationships. For key concept two, we have values, rights, culture, and sexuality. For key concept three, understanding gender. For key concept four, we have violence and staying safe. For key concept 5, skills for health and well-being. For key concept 6, we have the human body and development. For key concept 7, we have sexuality and sexual behavior. And key concept 8, we have sexual and reproductive health. Now, with regards to each topic, I hope you are seeing this picture clearly, all right? So we can see here that each of the key concepts has its own three domains of learning: the knowledge, attitudes, and of course, skills. Such as if we take a look on the key concept 4 about violence and staying safe. On the topics, they are violence, consent, privacy, and bodily integrity, safe use of information and communication technologies or ICTs. So when we think of the knowledge with regards to violence and staying safe, especially on bodily integrity, we actually want or need for the learners to need that what is the concept behind violence, what is the concept behind consent, privacy, and bodily integrity, and how do we deal with safe use of information and communications technology, taking for an instance. Now let's try to dig deeper on the attitudes. How does violence, what do you call this, how does violence challenge the young women, the young men, or the children? something like that. And how, what is the use, okay, the use now of information and communications technology, okay. Why do I need to present these key concepts with regards to teaching or learning comprehensive sexual education? Because comprehensive sexual education is not just merely about having a sexual intercourse or anything like that. It is more on the deeper manner on how we see or view, or what is our perspective with regards to comprehensive sexuality education or sexuality education itself. That it is more than just, you know, teaching, teaching reproductive system, taking for an instance how men or women go with intercourse, something like that. But it is more on the relationship, values, rights, culture, and sexuality, and that we understand more of the knowledge. And if we have that understanding gender, if we have established that relationship, we could that avoid violence and staying safe. What are the skills for health and well-being, how we view our body, how we, how we protect our own rights with our body, and what is sexuality and sexual behavior, take for an instance. And it's all about understanding and recognizing, and of course reducing the risk of some unhealthy way, such as STIs and HIV or AIDS. Okay, I hope are we get that right. Okay. Now, let's go with the characteristics of comprehensive sexuality education. Well, these characteristics actually is based on the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education. It is scientifically accurate, incremental, age and developmentally appropriate, curriculum based, comprehensive, based on a human rights approach, based on gender equality, culturally relevant and context appropriate, transformative, and able to develop life skills needed to support healthy choices. Now, if we talk about scientifically accurate, based on the ITGSA, or the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education, scientifically accurate to the point that the content of CSE is based on the facts and evidence related to SRH, sexuality and behaviors. If we look at the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education, we could find there the research based when it comes to SRH, or sexual and reproductive health rights, and of course sexuality and behaviors. Now, it is incremental, meaning to say it is a continuing educational process. When we say in um, continuing educational process, then it should start at an early age. At an early age, and it has a spiral progression when new information builds upon previous learning at an early age, middle age, and it therefore goes with um, the adult life, taking for an instance. And it is age and developmentally appropriate. Same goes with incremental. The content of the CSE is responsive to the changing needs and capabilities of the child and the young person as they grow. So based on the age and development of learners, comprehensive sexuality education addresses developmentally relevant topics when it is mostly timely for their health and well-being, such as developmental diversity, cognitive and emotional, okay, and many more. Now, it is curriculum based. It comprehensive sexual education is a curriculum base, since it is written, or it has a curriculum that guides educators' effort to support students' learning. It can be in school or out of school setting, which includes key teaching objectives, the development of learning objectives, the presentation of concepts, and the delivery of clear key messages in a structured way. Comprehensive in a sense that it is accurate, evidence informed, and age appropriate information on sexuality. It addresses sexual and reproductive health issues, including but not limited to sexual and reproductive anatomy and physiology, puberty and menstruation, reproduction, modern contraception, pregnancy and childbirth, and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV and AIDS. Comprehensive, the key concepts that were presented a while back. Okay, now let's go with based on human rights approach. It is based on human rights approach because CSE builds on and promotes an understanding of universal human rights, including the rights of the children and young people to health, education, information, equality, and non-discrimination. Now, um, based on human rights approach, if we take a look at again on the SDGs that were presented a while back, it ensures equality of education. Um, we should not discrimination, but includes inclusivity in all natures and all forms, and something like that. Okay, let's go. Same goes if we have based on human rights approach, we also had that gender equality based on gender equality because the gender perspective is mainstreamed throughout CSE curricula and it is integral to the effective delivery of CSE programs. Okay? It addresses the different ways that gender norms can influence inequality and how these inequalities can affect the overall health and well-being of children and young people, while also impacting efforts to prevent issues such as HIV, STIs, early and unintended pregnancies, and gender-based violence. Therefore, CSE contributes to gender equality by building awareness. Building awareness. Since we are now talking on the gender equality, okay, it is now also culturally relevant and context appropriate in a sense that it respects, okay, it fosters respect and responsibility within relationships, supporting learners as they examine, understand and challenge the ways in which cultural structures, norms, and behaviors affect people's choices and relationships within a specific setting. Okay? If it is culturally relevant and context appropriate, now comprehensive sexual education is also a transformative one since a it contributes to the formation of a fair and compassionate society by empowering individuals and communities. Transformative in a sense that it since it calls for awareness to everyone, it strengthens young people's citizenship as they are being what do you call this? They are now being aware of the issues, certain issues of in their society. Take for an instance, such as early teenage pregnancy, they can have an advocacy there with regards to how to avoid teenage pregnancy and so on and so forth. Now it becomes more transformative. And therefore, if they are now aware and advocating something with regards to this, for instance, with our topic for today, comprehensive sexual education, they may able to develop life skills needed to support healthy choices. Okay? Now, as we know the characteristics of comprehensive sexual education, now let's go with the misconceptions of comprehensive sexual education. Now, if we think of the misconceptions, here it goes that CSE leads to early sexual initiation, CSE deprives children of their innocence, CSE goes against our culture or religion, parents will object to sexuality education being taught in schools, teaching CSE is too difficult for teachers, CSE is already covered in other subjects, biology, life skills, or civics education. Young people already know everything about sex and sexuality through the internet and social media. CSE is a means of recruiting young people towards alternative lifestyles. Okay. If we take a look at this one, these are the misconceptions. Now, let's go now with the facts, okay? That CSE does not lead to early initiation or more sex, but it leads to delayed initiation and more responsible sexual behavior. Okay, if we are basing these facts on how we can view or how we can teach or learn comprehensive sexual education based on the international technical guidance on sexual education, specifically from the 8 concepts presented a while back, we can clearly say that CSE leads to delayed initiation and more responsible sexual behavior. And evidence shows that children benefit from scientifically accurate, non-judgmental, and age and developmentally appropriate information through formal schooling. Okay? And CSE programs should build support among the custodians of culture in order to adapt content to the local cultural context while also addressing negative social norms and harmful practices that are not in line with human rights. Okay? CSE programs are meant to work in partnership with and engage parents. Most teachers have the skills or can be trained in CSE as included in national curricula. Effective CSE covers a comprehensive set of topics, attitudinal and skills-based learning outcomes which may not necessarily be included in other subjects. Online media doesn't necessarily provide age-appropriate, evidence-based facts. Therefore, CSE offers them a healthy space for discussion since we already know what a social media or an online media or online platform can do because it has also advantage and disadvantage when it comes to using it, right? Okay. Now, let's go with the main principle of CSE is that everyone, regardless of lifestyle, has the right to accurate information and services related to their health and well-being. Okay, that is actually facts from International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education. Now, why is there um from my presentation, from the definition, from the characteristics and facts, and of course misconception, the question is why is there a need now to study or include comprehensive sexuality education in our curriculum or as a part of a learning area? Now, because in Asia and the Pacific, less than a third of young people have comprehensive knowledge on of HIV. A significant proportion of adolescents in the region also report attitudes that reflect the acceptance of intimate partner violence, most notably in the Pacific, where two-thirds of girls and 58% of boys agree that physical violence is justified for at least one reason. Gender norms and attitude are formed during childhood and early adolescence, highlighting the importance of providing comprehensive sexuality education from an early age. Well, in some parts of the world, 2 out of 3 girls reported having no idea of what was happening to them when they began menstruating. Other reports that around 1 in 8 girls, or 19 million, and 1 in 50 boys, 4 million, aged 15 to 19 years old, are currently married or in a union, and almost 27 million young women aged 20 to 24 years were married by age 18 in Asia and the Pacific. So this is actually a report, no, of international technical guidance on comprehensive sexual education and other um, what they call this, and other offices when it comes to the United Nations, UNICEF, and UNESCO. There were an estimated 3.7 million births to 15 to 19 years old girls in the Asia Pacific region in 2019, 1 in 6 young women in the Pacific, 1 in 8 in South Asia, and 1 in 14 in Southeast Asia have commenced childbearing by the age of 18. Maternal disorders are the leading cause of death of girls aged 15 to 19 years in the Pacific and the second leading cause of death in South Asia. Okay, now let's go now on the laws, policies, curriculum, teachers' preparedness, and the needs of the people, specifically the young people, and of course, the monitoring and assessment with regards to CSE. So here it goes. On the current status of CSE implementation in the Asia and the Pacific, it is actually based on the MOE survey findings of 2019 based from the presentations presented by the YPR Asia and the Pacific. Okay. Um, from the data, okay, from the data gathered, there are 75% in Asia where they are aware of the national laws and policies relating to sexual and reproductive health and or sexuality education for young people. While in the Pacific, there are 63% of whom they are aware of the national laws and policies relating to sexual and reproductive health and of course sexuality education for young people. Now, why why do we need to be aware, or why our laws and policies for sexuality education is important? Because they are vital for ensuring an environment where accurate comprehensive sexual education can be taught. Now, if we already know and we are ensured with regards to the accuracy of comprehensive sexuality education when we are teaching it and learning it, now the opportunity is that majority of countries have laws or policies related to SRH and or sexuality education for young people, since according to survey, basing it from the percentage number, they are really aware of the national laws and policies with regards to sexuality and reproductive health and or sexual education for young people. Okay. However, the challenges is that the commitment to sexuality education within these policies and strategies depend now on the national priorities, which are often guided by the traditional or religious practices. So it goes now, one challenge now of delivering CSE or having laws and policies with regards to CSE is what is or what are now the top priorities of our country, taking for an instance. Okay, if CSE is not a one of the top priorities, then it is one of the challenges when it comes to um, delivering, okay, delivering comprehensive sexuality education. It depends on the national priorities. Now, for countries that have decentralized education systems, the decision to apply a mandatory sexuality education curriculum is implemented at the state or provincial level and therefore is not necessarily mandatory nationwide. This goes again with the national priorities and of course on how could we deal these issues or CSE into schooling. It is also depend on the education system being implemented on a national territory or in a national level. Now, the recommendation, therefore, is to include provision of sexuality education, ideally comprehensive sexuality education in national laws, policies, and strategies to promote age-responsive, school-based sexuality education from early primary through to secondary education or secondary schools. And make sexuality education in schools mandatory by law. Okay. Ensure that where possible, the implementation of sexuality education is consistent across states and provinces, and of course, build on community support for sexuality education to reduce social resistance. Okay. Now that we have learned about the laws and policies with regards to comprehensive sexual education, now let's go with the comprehensive sexual education on its curriculum. Okay? Starting sexuality education at an early age is important in many ways, from formation of positive gender norms, protection from sexual exploitation, development of body positive approaches, and etc. However, in nearly half of the countries, sexuality education is not introduced to young people in early childhood. Now it is based on the reports of on in 2019. Now let me present to you a framework based on the Department of Education in the Philippines with regards to the policy guidelines on the implementation of the comprehensive sexual education. So they have written an order with regards to the implementation of the comprehensive sexual education. This framework is actually based on the DepEd Order number 31 series of 2018, which the title of that DepEd order is Policy Guidelines on the Implementation of the Comprehensive Sexual Education. So if we take a look at this framework, we can see how the curriculum of CSE should be applied in schools and of course in out of schools. If we the monitoring and evaluation system, um, this includes the central office with regards to Department of Education. Now, through the curriculum support system, we have teachers, materials, facilities, and equipment, ICT environment, the assessment forms, school leaders and management, schools division, region CO, technical assistance, okay, community, industry, government offices, or government organizations, non-government organizations, and civil society organizations partnerships. This curriculum support system could also bring enlightenment to what comprehensive sexuality education should do to become our Filipino learners to be learned, empowered, engaged in the 21st century skills. Now, as we go on, we can see here in the curriculum support system, it is based on the in school or out of school. Okay. The teachers or the curriculum support system teaches the 7 concepts, 7 values, 7 life skills, depending on the grade level of our students or of our learners. So if we could see here the core contents and standards, the concepts, values, and life skills, it also happens that from what they call this from the definition alone a while back that comprehensive sexuality education touches the three domains of learning, which are knowledge, skills, and attitudes. We can see here, all right, I hope you are seeing my cursor. We can see here that from the 7 concepts, 7 values, 7 skills are actually on the 3 domains of learning. From the 3 domains of learning, which are knowledge, the values or the attitude, and of course, the skills, which are skills. Okay. Now, the 7 concepts in the comprehensive sexuality education in the Philippines, which are human body and human development, personhood and values, healthy relationships, sexuality and sexual behaviors, sexual and reproductive health, personal safety, gender, culture, and human rights. While the 7 values are self knowledge, self respect, self protection, non judgment, respect, concerns for others, empathy, positive attitude towards sexuality, responsibility, and independence, 7 life skills, analysis of external influences, accessing authoritative information, effective communication, responsible decision making, self management, goal setting, advocacy for others, and changes. Now, these core contents and standards are actually now linked with music, arts, P and health, civic education or social studies or araling panlipunan in Filipino, okay, or in the Philippines, the education sa pagpapakatao or values education, and of course personal development or personhood development in sciences, and of course personality development. Okay, so this is actually the curriculum framework with regards to comprehensive sexuality education, okay, in the Philippines. Now, let me share to you a sample of a what we call this, a curriculum guide on Araling Panlipunan or Social Studies or Civic Education, okay, that is linked on CSE or Comprehensive Sexuality Education. So this is based on Kasha et al. Okay, they are the authors of this. What do you call this? They are the authors of this curriculum guide with regards to comprehensive sexuality education and of course linking it to Araling Panlipunan. They have our division presented this curriculum to us during our webinar on comprehensive sexuality education. Okay, so this is the content. So this is grade 1 or in the key stage 1. Okay, key stage 1, grade 1. This is actually a primary level. So pagkilala sa sarili or knowing ourselves, the CSE or key concept behind it is sexual and reproductive parts are vital parts of the body. The body parts can be described using the different sense organ. Different people have different bodies and capacities, including of the sexual body parts. Bodies including sexual parts change as people grow. Now, with regards to the content standard, it is actually the learners based from the content standards and CSE. Okay, the learners should be able to understand the importance of knowing ourselves. Okay, and for the performance standards, the learners should be able to write a story with regards to their own characteristics of being a Filipino, okay, and of course with regards to their, you know, um, what they want to be when they grow up, or and etc. Shows positive attitudes. What are their characteristics, attitudes, and etc. Now with the learning competencies, it says here that um, the learners should be able to what do you call this? Um, the learners should be able to present, okay, present their own characteristics through a creative works, taking for an instance, and especially um, knowing themselves, okay, knowing themselves. I'm actually translating it. So the learning competencies here are based from the CSE, describe their bodies and body parts using proper names, show positive attitudes, explain body differences and growth, and show respect for differences and growth. Okay? Through there, as they know themselves, okay, teachers now should try their best to explain the changes and growth of their physical body and of course their attitudes, okay, and of course values. Okay, so much for that, and let's now go with the commonly taught topics. For primary level, the topics commonly reported as being covered in the curriculum at the primary level are puberty, HIV and AIDS, STIs, love and relationships, gender and gender norms, and sexual abuse and violence. While for the secondary level, or the junior high school and or senior high school, um, it is more on the increased number of countries that introduce other topics at the secondary level that are pregnancy and birth, contraception and marriage, aside from puberty, HIV, AIDS, STIs, and sexual abuse violence. Okay? So in 2019, these are the top 7 topics young people didn't learn but wish to have learned in school. They wish to have learned in school the sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, gender equality, gender norms, sexual abuse, violence, and gender harassment, contraception, menstruation, marriage, relationship, family, and sexually transmitted infections, well, not including HIV and AIDS. Okay. Now that we know the curriculum of the CSE, now let's go to the teachers' preparedness. So 21 out of 28 countries are where they have required teachers to have training in sexuality education before teaching the subjects in school. Why then is there a need to train teachers? Because it is essential to ensure accurate and quality CSE to be delivered in a safe environment. It should feel adequately prepared and supported to teach sexuality education and have access to materials and resources. Okay. Now, this 75%, what does the finding suggest? Okay. While two-thirds of the countries are providing sexuality education pre and or in-service trained teachers, the quality and content are not yet known. So it is actually based on 2019. Okay. Let's go with monitoring and assessment. Okay. Why is there a need now to monitor and assess the quality and delivery of comprehensive sexuality education? Well, why is monitoring and evaluation for sexual education important? Because to assess the quality of delivery and student outcomes, as well as maintaining the quality of the curriculum. Well, most countries in Asia and the Pacific do not have a clear monitoring and assessment system for sexual education. Since it is basically, if we take a look at in the curriculum of the Philippines a while back, it is actually integrated. It is actually still integrated. Okay, it is actually still integrated with the what they call this, with the other learning areas such as physical education and health, civic education, and sciences, values education, and of course, personhood education or personality development. Now, it is actually difficult now to monitor and assess the learning outcomes when it comes to comprehensive sexuality education. Since, since what they call this? Since if we are preparing and integrating this comprehensive sexuality education in our subjects, like in for instance, I am teaching social studies education, um, it is just like um, ha- hitting hitting two birds in one stone, taking for an instance. So it's really difficult to monitor and evaluate um, comprehensive sexuality education if it is integrated in each of our subject. That is actually the disadvantage if it is what they call this integrated when it comes to monitoring and assessment. It is very difficult now, and it has no clear guidelines when it comes to assessing the learning or assessing of assessment of what they call this assessing you know assessing learners, what they call this assessing learners capacity on how they are understanding um, comprehensive sexuality education. Okay, monitoring and assessment. If it is integrated, then we have really have a difficult time on, or we do not have a clear monitoring and assessment system for sexual education if it is integrated. Now, let's go with the young people's needs. So, what are the sources of information of the young people or the children? Well, 56% of them, they get the source of information with regards to sexuality education through their peers, okay? Through their peers. 55% of them in the internet, and of course 39% of them from the school. Well, while 28% of the youth, okay, or young people, excuse me, well, young people felt that their school taught them about sexuality very well or somewhat well. Okay, if we could really, if we take a look in this, 56% from their peers, sexuality education, therefore, if we take a look from their peers and from the internet, since young people dwell much, if we base this from the data, young people dwell much on the information coming from their peers or from the internet. Um, this might also have a problem with regards to how they view, okay, how they view sex, how they view relationships, and of course with regards to how they view the genders of their of the people living in their community, or their, what do you call this, schoolmates. Taking for an instance, there might be a problem with that if we rely much the information from our peers and from the internet when talking about comprehensive sexuality education. Now, well, with regards to the satisfaction with the sexuality education, um, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex youth feel that the internet is an even more important source of information than youth in general. Okay? Satisfaction with sexuality education was lower among lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex youth, respondents and respondents with disabilities compared with the general youth. So, 15% with the members of the LGBTQIA plus were very satisfied during the 2019 survey, while 65% of them are somewhat satisfied. With having a disability, okay, 6% of them are somewhat dissatisfied, and 6% of them are very satisfied. 56% of them are somewhat or very dissatisfied, or 65% of the LGBTQIA again is very dissatisfied or somewhat dissatisfied. Okay. For the general youth, okay, 27% of them are very satisfied and or somewhat satisfied, while 47% of them um, were very dissatisfied and somewhat dissatisfied. Because again, we have, with regards to the delivering of the deliverance of the sexuality education in the curriculum, if we take a look at the curriculum a while back, if it is integrated, then if it is integrated, it could have a higher chance, no? It could have a higher chance that we cannot really focus on the comprehensive sexuality education itself, but merely focus on what is the subject really teaching us. And if we talk more on the monitoring and assessment, if it is integrated, it has no clear, really. It is very difficult now to assess and monitor the the learnings of our students with regards to comprehensive sexual education. Okay. Now, what are the recommendations based from the survey? Now, build support for comprehensive sexuality education for all children and young people, including vulnerable groups, engage young people in program designing, planning, and evaluation, tailor programs to the unique needs of participants. Facilitators should be well trained and supported to be able to deliver sexuality education that can meet the needs of vulnerable population of young people. Facilitators for groups of marginalized young people should be from the same marginalized community if possible. If we are talking now with our communities, okay, communities, develop strategies to address and reach out of school youth and vulnerable youth populations, okay, out of school youth. What else? The LGBTQIA, develop strategies to the general youth, and of course the disabled, okay. Use a range of teaching methods. The teaching methods with regards to actually, when teaching comprehensive sexuality education, it is also more of being inclusive, okay, inclusive in nature, okay, in order to cater all, since we are for education for all, okay, regardless of sex, regardless of status, if they are with special needs or not, it should be inclusive also our teaching methods, okay, to encourage critical thinking, communication and negotiation, decision making and assertiveness, okay. To They recommend to strengthen comprehensive sexual education for young people not engaged in formal education. Okay. Speaking of not engaged in formal education, these are now the out of school youth. Okay. The out of school youth. Now let's now talk with the out of school comprehensive sexuality education, wherein the out of school CSE is a comprehensive sexuality education which is delivered outside the school curriculum or formal school setting. It can be for children and young people who are or not in education, and it can be delivered in diverse settings such as youth centers, religious institutions, detention centers, and many more. So now we are talking here about the different communities. Now let's go with the here now is the out of school youth being delivered with the comprehensive sexuality education. Okay. Well, what is more on the out of school comprehensive sexual education? Okay. If we are delivering out of school if we are delivering comprehensive sexuality education to the out of school, it can reach children and young people who are not in school. It can provide CSE to children and young people in situations where CSE is not included in the school curriculum. Um, Supplement in school CSE in context, okay, where it is not comprehensive or not of high quality, provide CSE that is tailored to the needs of specific groups of children and young people, those with disabilities, those who are LGBTQIA+, etc., members, and etc. Can be more flexible than in school CSE. Example, extended or repeated sessions, selection of facilitators, inclusion of sensitive topics, diverse teaching methods, and etc. Now, we can also deliver comprehensive sexuality education out to the out of school youth, or from those of youth in the formal education, by using digital platforms, okay, by using digital platforms for out of school sexuality education, children and young people are gaining increased access to digital devices and the internet, okay. However, However, digital technology is also have the disadvantages or advantages. But we could try to present the digital technology of or using digital platforms in a manner for a positive way or in its advantageous what we call this in its use for the advantage to deliver sexuality education. Now, digital technology is used to provide another entry point for sexuality education. The internet and digital media can enable private, personalized, and easily access answers to critical questions about sexuality and relationship. Okay? Now, what are the opportunities then if we are using digital platforms for delivering sexuality education to our out of school youth? Okay? It can be accessible. It can be accessible. What else? It is flexible and convenient. They can learn sexuality education wherever they want, whenever they want. Okay? It is more efficient with the potential to reach large numbers of people at lower cost in the long run. Okay, include content that it is interactive, immersive, and personalized, efficiently and safe reach more vulnerable groups with information relevant specifically to them, and deliver CSE with increased fidelity. Okay, now if we have the opportunities, now what are the limitations when it comes or challenges when it comes to using digital platforms of delivering out of school sexuality education? Now, if we use digital platforms, these are the challenges. Some approaches using technology may be less viable in resource poor settings. It is now actually depending on the community. Okay, that is the challenge or loophole again. Now, assessing students' learning may be more complex if they are using hybrid learning, online learning. Okay, young people do not have uniform access, particularly in low income countries. There are also disparities in access due to geography for those in the rural areas, gender, and level of literacy and digital literacy. Okay, these are now the issues when it comes to the digital formation, or if we are going now in digital, it also goes with the levels of literacy and digital literacy. Okay, so we should also be what they call this we should also be a lifelong learners. Okay, delivering in age appropriate manner may be more challenging. It's very true, this one. um, Age appropriate manner, and of course, you know. Okay, now we are done with what do you call this the out of school comprehensive sexuality education. Now let's go with how can we advocate or raise awareness with comprehensive sexuality education. Now, let's try to figure out where the gaps are. We should actually identify the issues of our community where they are struggling, where we are struggling the most in relation to sexuality, and by drawing a table column with problem causes, what needs to change, and the international technical guidance on sexuality education point. And let's try to map the availability of initiatives, their focus, reach and providers of the initiatives in our community, differentiating acceptable initiatives from existing initiatives and suggesting non-existent initiatives in needs. Okay. Aside from that, um, we can also have engaging potential allies with our government advocacy, engaging voters, school advocacy, engaging teachers, students, and parents, and of course, in religious institution, engaging religious leaders. How to learn about our religion stance on sexuality, include our religious leaders in the process of having this advocacy, and of course, find organizations that are on our sides. Okay, that is now um, actually, this is actually the end of my presentation. So, the advocacy, what comprehensive sexuality education means, the curriculum behind CSE, the teachers' preparedness, and of course, how we could monitor and assess our learners if it is integrated or not. Now, here are my references. Um, okay, the DepEd Order number 31 series of 2018 policy guidelines on the implementation of the comprehensive sexuality education, international technical guidance on sexuality education, the YPR Asia and the Pacific, specifically the SRHR presentation, and of course, Tasha et al. ND. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you have learned something with regards to comprehensive sexuality education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation about comprehensive sexuality education, Boon or Bane. Thank you, sir. So now we are proceed to our Q&A session, and after a short video clips, we come back again. Okay, sir. Dear participants, today we have no quiz competition, so we move to our Q&A session. Dear participants, now we are in our Q&A session time. You can send your question in the comment box. If you have any question related to this topic, you can ask the question in the comment box. Hello, sir. Sir, can you hear me?
Okay, the challenges and disadvantages of comprehensive sexuality education. Um, I I also attended some webinars with regards to this comprehensive sexuality education. If we are looking at the what do you call this? If we are looking at the our nation what do you call this country, okay, the challenges and disadvantages are of course our own cultures and tradition. Okay, it limits us to teach comprehensive sexual education because of our cultures and traditions, and of course basically if we are here in the Philippines, actually if we are here in the Philippines, it is somewhat a, you know, our religion. Okay, it is actually the challenge and disadvantage to go more, of course, go more deeper with regards to comprehensive sexual education. So I believe that the challenges, therefore, the challenges and disadvantages of that's the challenge. However, the disadvantage is that the disadvantage of comprehensive sexual education is somewhat um, it is now based on um, again, yes, again, our religion, culture, and tradition. That is the comprehensive sexual education's challenges and disadvantages for me. How to eradicate sexuality and education by simply, you know, um, how to eradicate sexuality and education. Um, is now, if it is more on my personal opinion, then I may not include more of sex what do you call this, sexuality topics. It depends on what are your topics in teaching, you know. If we are talking more on the teaching aspects, the topics, uh it depends on the topics. Yes, it depends on the topics if you are teaching, in your teaching. Okay, the teaching and learning.
Thank you, sir, for a wonderful answer. Dear participants, we are still waiting for your question. So if you have any question related to this topic, you can ask that question in the comment box. Sir, our next question is, do we really need to sexuality education in schools, especially in elementary?
Well, based on the based based on the key concepts presented in the international guidelines on teaching comprehensive sexual education, sexuality education doesn't just merely focusing on the sexual intercourse, but actually about our dealing with our relationships with our families, how specifically um, what do you call this? Knowing ourselves more, how we value ourselves more, and actually, it is very important, of course, to also teach in elementary in order for our elementary learners to really know how to value themselves and to really see their worth as an individual and in their family. Actually, one key concept presented a while back is is what do you call this? Um, the families and the familiar relationships and etc. Well, gender-based violence is related to sexuality in education because comprehensive sexuality education doesn't just merely what I've said a while back. It doesn't just merely teaching the reproductive cycle, the menstrual cycle, but also it focuses on the gender-based violence. Mean to say, the violence when it comes to our relationship, violence with regards to the how we see how we see ourselves, the violence with regards on how we view or the bodily image. Taking for an instance, there are more of abuses with regards to gender-based by sexual or sexual abuses gender on our gender-based what do you call this, gender-based violence. Okay, so that is why I believe that is related. Will implementing CSE in school and out of school cause a positive impact or negative impact to the society? Well, now these questions will depend now on a certain community. Okay, it is now more on the bounded. We are bounded with our own culture, tradition, and of course religion. Um, it will cause a positive impact if we are open to teach it. It will cause a negative impact if some of our what they call this, some of the leaders, taking for an instance, in a certain community, couldn't want to um, more on believe on their side, stick to their traditions, something like that.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful answer, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and sharing your valuable time with us. Thank you. Dear participants, today our program name is Comprehensive Sexuality Education, Boon or Bane, and the code is IGP 0332. The code is IGP0332. Without code, no one is eligible for certificate. With code, you can claim your certificate anytime from our website. Our website address is dygp.com. Thank you very much, everyone, for your active participation in this session. I hope we'll meet together in our upcoming webinar. Thank you so much. Stay happy and stay safe.